And we're off and running with the second part of the Longstone Local History Group's Village Video 2005. Following on from part 1, we've got 6 more newsreels covering the months from July to December, and they're interspersed with a series of features about our local communities and just what it is that makes them tick.
Herbert Elliott, George Furness.
Every November, the annual Service of Remembrance brings a handful of local names back into focus.
Stanley Jeffcoat, Arthur Morton.
It's a stark reminder of a way of life that's hard for us to imagine, and a warning that ours will also fade in the mists of time. So, one day soon, these video snapshots could well be helping future historians to see 2005 through our eyes.
I can't see properly.
Nowadays, we seem to live in a frenzied global village, forever having to be in 2 places at once. That's why some of the things that go on live in our community get missed. And that's another reason why the local history group undertook this project. We wanted to create a window onto the year so that everyone would have the chance to look back at 2005 and replay what they missed.
It's when you go trick or treat.
And part 2 starts with one of the busiest months of the Longstone year. This hectic month kicks off with the Bakewell Carnival, when the town comes alive with decorated floats and marching bands. The 2 floats that came from our area were the first Bakewell Brownies, whose theme was recycling, and the Great Longstone Fake Queen. Since Grace's dad runs the village garage, the 3 mums had a head start when it came to creating a carriage that was fit for a queen and her attendants in the Bakewell Carnival.
I do like your feathers. Fantastic, yeah. Look brilliant, brilliant.
You see, like our feathers in our hair.
That was guest of honour Tim Dante, the actor, whose wife was one of the judges. Now, in contrast with the Queen's finery, everything about the Brownies was rubbish.
A cake tin, and milk bottle tops, a bin bag, and lots of rubbish to content.
But the judges liked their eco-style, and their float got a prize. Meanwhile, back in Longstone, preparations were underway for the cricket club's party on the pitch that evening. And a few days later, there was more dancing in the village, but of a rather different sort. This Morris team danced outside the White Lion, just down the road from where another side had been filmed. This footage, shot by Derek Wilson in 1958, has recently been added to the local history group's film archive, where it sits alongside Noel Yates material. His film, from the 60s and 70s, now transferred to digital video, was shown in the village hall so that we could get some help with identifying the faces who appeared on screen. The following day, a new feature appeared on the green.
I don't like it there, I mean, anywhere but there.
Even before it was operational, its position was controversial, and we'll be returning to the subject of Great Longstone's new pillar box in the coming months.
Hello everyone.
Saturday the 9th was a busy day for the local vicar.
Today I have a marriage here at Ashford at 11 o'clock. Who would like to look after the choir fees? Rachel. Followed by the first of my 2 weddings at Longstone at 12:30. So it's a bit of a dash. Let us proceed in peace.
In the name of Christ.
Amen.
The bright sunshine got things off to a good start, but there was a problem in that one of the hymns chosen by the bride, who by now was getting to be worryingly late, can be sung to 2 different tunes, so the choir master needed to check with her which one she preferred on this her special day.
Good morning and welcome here into Holy Trinity, the Parish Church of Ashford-in-the-Water, for this the marriage of Clive and Lynn.
At the high point of the service, when rings were being exchanged, it became apparent from Clive's expression that something wasn't quite right.
I hadn't realised he'd got her right hand rather than her left hand, and then he put it on the wrong finger as well. So there we go. I quite often have to sort them out. They're so nervous, you know.
And as the wedding bells pealed, it was 1 down, 2 to go. Well, almost.
It's not just the setting out, you know, it's the putting away as well. By rights, the marriage registers should not actually leave the building. They should all be made out in church. However, for all practical purposes, everybody takes them away home or to their office to do the writing up. Because it has to be done so carefully. You can't just scrub it out or snowpaint. You've got to make margin notes if you make an error, and then get everybody to initial it that it's correct.
And so, paperwork safely in hand, it's back to Longstone for the next 2 weddings.
Okay, having got you into the position here, I will say a word of welcome to the congregation.
The previous Wednesday evening, Kate and Graham had come to St Giles so that Clive could talk them through a rehearsal of their wedding service.
And then I'll announce the first hymn. And then, when you've done it, I get the 2 witnesses to sit down and they sign. And the key thing is, I want you to sign with your full names, everybody. All right?
Is it Catherine Elizabeth Merrick or Catherine Elizabeth Fowler? It's Fowler, isn't it?
It's a record of how you enter the contract,
so it's
not
Fowler.
of how
it's
you
Fowler, that's
how
it.
you leave it. All
That's
right?
And in a few minutes' time, all those preparations come to fruition. In the vestries, both chorister and vicar get changed into their work clothes and prepare themselves for the task at hand. And what do weddings mean to the choir, Megan?
Money.
And how much do you get?
£3. £3.
Which route we come in and go out?
Well,
Just like his colleague at Ashford, the Longstone choir master has a problem. But this time it's making sure that the chap who's videoing the wedding knows when to move so as to let the choir get to their seats.
when you're ready, I'll bring you forward. Thumbs up to the organist to play the entrance music. Okay? Now, how are you going to take Dad's arm?
I don't know.
That's it. Okay? You happy? Right. I'm going to walk nice and slowly. The key thing is I don't want you to get too close behind me, because everybody wants to see you, not me.
Rehearsal over, this was for real. And the performances prompt a spontaneous round of applause when the newlyweds kiss. It's less than an hour until the next wedding, so the registers can stay here in the church.
Yeah, okay.
Is there time for a quick cuppa, do you
I
think?
reckon you might make one.
I'll nip over to the vicarage and have a
Don't
go.
blame you.
2 down, 1 to go.
Clear blue sky, sunshine.
It's going. Go.
Quite looking forward to this last one. Not because it's the last one, but because it's my neighbour.
just checking. It's I will, isn't it? Not I will. I've got it in my head. It was I do, and I thought, sure it isn't.
Good afternoon.
Both of you look lovely.
Thank you.
That's lovely. Thomas William Cox. Emma McCaskill. Will you take Emma McCaskill to be your wife, to be your husband, forsaking all others, faithful to her, faithful to him, as long as you both shall live? Those whom God has joined together, let no one put asunder.
After tearing down the dotted line, the wedding party and the vicar go their separate ways. Outside the church, the cameras are working overtime, and just about everyone's here, except Pauline Jackson and Joe, who have volunteered to do the afternoon milking, along with Mirat, the student who's recently been helping on the farm. Inside the church, it's time to pack things away, and no time for dawdling either.
It's quite normal after a wedding, you know, to go round and collect up sort of glasses case, gloves and all sorts of things. I had a cup of tea at lunchtime, a little sit down, help Joy do the beds, and then I hope to have an hour or two on the river, fly fishing.
So, whilst the vicar prepares to unwind, the wedding party prepare to party.
Grab somebody by the arm.
But first, they've got to negotiate their way past Fred Mellor's noisy collecting bucket and bin lid, en route to the reception.
Oh, somebody said you went for a get down notice.
A little earlier in the day, there'd been a different sort of buzz going round the village, and as a result, Frank Hurst had made a beeline to get some help from Neville Casey.
What's the problem there then?
Just a swarm that's landed in his garden this morning.
Well, before we get there, Neville, just tell us why Frank asked you to help him.
Well, he knows I used to keep bees.
A cloud of bees had followed their queen and settled on a branch in Frank's garden. Neville's plan was to shake them off into this nucleus hive or nuke box so that they could be contained and safely moved. Provided the queen was in the box, the workers would stay with her, and they'd set up a new honey-producing colony in it. But right now there was nothing to do except wait for a couple of days until the bees had calmed down sufficiently for the hive to be safely moved. Well, it's about 8:15 on a Sunday morning, and acting on information received, I've come down to the bridge to see what's going to happen. Before 2005, I used to wonder how the art show banner magically appeared every year on the Churchdale side of the old railway bridge. Well, now that I've filmed it going up, I can roll back the tape and give you all an action replay.
Just for the cameras.
I'd vaguely assumed that the banner must have been lowered into place from the trail above, but it turns out that you can only get to the permanent fixing points from below. So the Village Hall Committee, who organise the art show, have to get up early on a Sunday morning so that they can get up the ladder when there's not much traffic about. Having lookouts on both sides of the bridge ensures that any cars can get by safely. And the art show banner gets exhibited in a prime position for some high-profile publicity.
Sort of curve it like that?
Yes, so it is.
The traditional art of well-dressing is in fact a fairly recent reintroduction in our area of the Peak.
This is our 14th.
And in July 2005, there were well dressings in both Great and Little Longstone. Here, in the barn at Home Farm, they spend a week preparing the 2 tableaux that will dress Little Longstone's old village pump.
They're chamomile flowers, and they're to give it more depth.
These people are from Norway and Germany.
Yes.
Visitors are welcome to see the work in progress, which draws to a conclusion on the Friday. And then the creations of clay and colour are brought together to form the dressings that will be blessed the following lunchtime.
It's always a little bit apprehension, you can imagine, and they're lifting it. And you think, what's going to fall out? But we've never lost anything, have we?
Definitely not moving it. Just the ladies wanting it level.
It's heavy work, but before long everything's fitted neatly into place. Ready for tomorrow around the old village pump. In Great Longstone, the story's been much the same.
Oh, that looks good. We'll just leave it like that, shall we? Can stand there all week? Yes, when we get to the top.
This well dressing is created in the school by children and adults, and then it's installed on the green on the Friday evening, so that it's ready to be blessed on Fate Day.
Way, isn't it?
On Saturday morning, the Queen's dais gets rebuilt next to the newly erected well dressing. And in the schoolyard, they're starting to get ready for the Great Longstone Church Fete. And you can see the results of all this hard work and more in July Part 2, which follows after the next chapter. Great Longstone Parish Council was created in 1894, and its records cast an intriguing light on how we used to live and what people moaned about in days gone by. In the 1890s, it was sanitation and lighting. In 1907, it was vandalism of the village pumps. In the 1920s, it was the village bath chair and also the lawn tennis court. That tennis club faded in the 1930s, and the present one was formed some 40 years later when the council constructed an all-weather court on the new part of the recreation ground. The present club's dealings with the parish council are also illuminating, and since 2005 was the year when the court got a facelift, the story of how it happened throws a spotlight on the workings of the parish council. There are 8 unpaid members who were all elected unopposed in 2003. There's also a part-time, paid parish clerk who looks after the paperwork and the councillors. Together, they run the village on our behalf, and their shop window is the monthly public meetings in the village hall. These are formal proceedings with a rigid agenda, so they could appear rather opaque to the casual observer, if there were any. The one member of the public who did attend every meeting throughout 2005 was Susie Barton, and her presence was another reason why not many came. We could all read about the meetings in her write-ups in Under the Edge, and in January, Council Chairman Josephine Gregory served the first shot in a rather long rally.
Now the tennis club did approach me and say that they got £4,000, which is a good sum, and we have got £4,000, like 8,000. I think we ought to set the ball rolling.
And because it kept rolling for all of 2005, this story provides a convenient overview of the workings of the parish council.
You want me to try and draft something, see how far I get?
So we're going to, Hugh, you're going to get a plan together, a spec together, something like that, yes?
For the repairs of the tennis court,
yes.
Yeah.
And then we'll take it.
I'll talk to Sheila Hurst as well.
Right, we'll have that on the agenda for next one.
So, the following Sunday, Councillor Wright, who's an architect, went to look at the problem first hand. The court has always sloped, but now the tarmac's breaking up and the fence has seen better days. So, the group hoped that at last they could afford to get everything fixed. But when they saw the prices in Hugh's brochures, they had to sit down and reflect that it just wasn't going to be possible. they'd have to look for a firm that didn't have glossy overheads and find some more money just to be able to afford the resurfacing and repairing the worst length of fencing. But, as it happened, Hugh had arranged for one such company to visit Longstone the following morning.
You want to ring me in the office later in the day and we'll make another time? What other days? What other days?
So no one has been to visit the site, even though I did invite a Chesterfield contractor, but unfortunately he didn't show up.
I've been through all this 3 years ago, and it's a nightmare.
Chairman, I'd like to see us hand over this to the actual tennis club to organise, possibly with one or two members of this council.
That's the right way to do it. I think I agree with Gordon. We need to just hand it over to the tennis club now. There's £4,000 in the kitty. If when we come to budget precept setting next year, it's not been spent, then we'll review it then. But what we don't need to do is keep debating it here until we've got a firm proposal to spend this £4,000.
Okay, but if Hugh has agreed with them to get specifications, I think he should go ahead and then let them do the grants, etc. Okay, so we're all happy with that.
Both Joe and myself had a meeting with a few members of the tennis club last Wednesday, and what was established was there is a sort of chicken and egg situation with regard to grants. They can't apply for any grants unless they know what the breakdown of costs are. So hence what we decided last week was for me to go ahead with the specification and seek tenders, and it would be a joint effort with the Parish Council and the tennis club.
Just say something. I think it's a bit unfair that the cricket club, they did everything off their own bat. Why can't the tennis club make their own financial arrangements and we just give them the money?
Well, they are doing, but at the end of the day, the tennis court belongs to the parish council.
Well,
because it is ours. At the
they
end
want
of the
all
day,
the tennis
if they're going to put a load of rubbish down, we won't approve that, will we? So it's got to be approved by us.
Surely Hugh's there to advise them.
He's there to advise them and negotiate.
Right. And so therefore...
But at the moment, it looks like 3 or 4 options.
Pointless discussing this until we know what money we're on about. We've got a budget, haven't we? And
but we've got an interest in that tennis court being the parish council. It belongs to the parish council, so we've got a strong interest.
What we're saying is, you've got it in hand. When you've got a definite answer of what everything you want doing, and you've made your mind up what you want doing, come back and say, right, we've got this and it's going to cost so much.
Yeah, well, we will report on that, Hugh.
That's all it is.
Okay, we'll agree to report now then to you, because I think it's necessary to report. It belongs to the council. Good evening, everyone. This is the annual parish meeting.
Strictly speaking, the parish meeting has got nothing to do with the parish council, except that it's chaired by the same person, and she reports on what's been happening in the village during the previous 12 months. It's then followed by the usual monthly council meeting, and although some of the councillors are absent, the overall numbers are made up by 4 in the public gallery, including James Bentley, the new district councillor, who's now a regular visitor following his recent success at the polls. Anyway, in the annual report, the matter of the tennis court is dealt with in one sentence.
Tennis court. This is to be resurfaced and some of the surrounding netting replaced with monies held by the council for this purpose, together with a large donation from the tennis club.
As the Wimbledon season approached, the club disseminated their plans on the village notice board and made the most of the summer weather. But when it came to finding a contractor, 4 months went by and nothing happened. The October meeting had a couple of special visitors who had been invited by the parish council.
Kevin Lowe and Mr. James.
Alan James from the district council and PC Kevin Lowe, our local beat officer, had been invited to answer concerns about a couple of current topics, namely the collection of green waste and a perceived recent juvenile crime wave that was linked to the South Lodge Children's Residential Unit on the far side of Thornbridge.
Speak to Angie. She will allay your fears. Okay.
These 2 topics were discussed for an hour before the parish council meeting proper started at 8:30, and it was 10 to 10 before Hugh was called upon for his tennis court update.
I've been trying to get more quotations, but I'm just not getting responses at the moment. But there is Jeff Birkinshaw, who's from Bakewell, a member of the club, and he's found someone in Sheffield who can possibly just do the surface only and the fence facing the goalpost, that side.
Right,
So
now, can we leave that? Yeah.
So
So we keep that on until...
That's right.
Yeah. Are you happy with that then?
At the November meeting of the parish council, they decided to contact Surface Renovations, the company that had done that job in Sheffield. And the following Sunday, their man Peter Hacker came out to Longstone to look at the court
Let me have a look at it.
and quote for the job.
What I'll do for you, I'll do what I can. If you can get that chain link and that chain link taken down and disposed of, I'll put your new chain link up there.
At last, they had a quotation that was affordable and the prospect of an imminent start. So, in the last week of November, the council held a special meeting to give the go-ahead,
£10,000 be accepted.
and some of the club members prepared the court for action. On the 6th of December, the first workers arrived to take out the old net posts and fix the new raised curbing. And on the 12th, they started laying the new tarmac. These compact machines were able to use spring bank for access, and then they crossed the grass on a causeway of boards. Once the surface was down, it was time to put up the new fencing, and then leave the new tarmac to cure for a month before it could be white-lined and played on. Meanwhile, Hugh was able to report on what had happened at the December council meeting.
From what I've seen of it, without going on to it, seemed to be satisfactory. The actual court and the netting seemed to be satisfactory. Peter Hacker will be sending to us his instruction sheets for the good upkeep of the court, so we'll be having maintenance instructions. So I think we need to be a bit more sharp and astute about keeping an eye on the maintenance in future.
I think we should write to the tennis club and say, now we have funded the improvement to the tennis court, we will expect a higher level of maintenance contribution from you as the
Well, we've only funded part. I mean,
That's enough, haven't we?
I think we've got to tread carefully, because one or two members have been talking to me quite firmly, thinking they've done more than the call of duty on this.
Well, we'll put it on the agenda, and anything else to report, we'll speak about it next time.
After several delays, the court was finally marked out in March 2006. And 6 months later, the tennis club paid for this green anti-slip surface to be added to the tarmac. Game, set and match for the players, and all for a smidgen over £11,000. For the parish council, play would continue as it always had, with the usual volleys of items from the monthly agendas. At the heart of our smaller communities are the annual parish meetings, where it's the residents themselves who take the decisions. And later, we'll also be dropping in on Rowland, Wardlow and Hassop to see parish pump democracy in action.
I welcome you all to the 14th well dressing of the village, and we're very welcome to Clive, who's going to carry out the service for us of the blessing. Just a little notice or two to say thanks very much to Grace, the Fairy Queen, for coming here, and to Sue, particularly Sue, for the design and all the helpers around who put the well dressing together over the past week.
And so, undeterred by the traffic running through the auditorium, this special afternoon begins in Little Longstone.
And now to the blessing of the wells. Bless, O Lord, the villagers of Little Longstone and the visitors here today. Help us to enjoy the beauty of your creation. May the blessing of God, Father, Son and Holy Spirit be upon this well and all who stop to see it. In Jesus' name, Amen. Now if we may have the national anthem.
And on the subject of queens, you may have noticed that Grace hasn't actually been crowned yet. But that's all about to change after she gets back to Great Longstone and leads the children's fancy dress parade through the village from Croft Road. The Crestbrook Band begin their afternoon in Great Longstone by marching at the head of the parade, which travels up the main street, past the shop and onto the green. This small but enthusiastic parade of children is part of a modern tradition which began after the village fete ceased to be a garden party and was reborn in its present guise, complete with a well-dressing and a queen.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my responsibility this year to bless the well that's been created by the children of the school. It's a lovely well-dressing reminder of their pond with all the wildlife in it. So let us pray. May the blessing of God, Father, Son and Holy Spirit be upon this well and all who stop to see it. Amen.
Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I thank you all for coming to this year's blessing of the well service, which will be followed by the church fete on this beautiful summer's day. I would also like to thank my family and friends for helping to decorate our float, and a big thank you to Mr. Hurst for lending us his lovely vintage car today. May I also take this opportunity to thank Stephanie, our retiring queen, for all her hard work representing our village throughout the year.
And I have pleasure in handing over the crown to Grace, our 2005 fate queen. I hope she'll enjoy it as much as I have.
Queen Grace, with her attendants, Alicia and Hester, will go into the school grounds at the back for the formal opening of the fete.
And before long, a large crowd, including a coachload of thirsty day trippers in search of refreshments, were all heading for the school grounds.
I now declare 2005 Longstone Church Fete open.
One of the reasons for holding the fete at the school was that in the event of rain, the stalls could be easily set up inside. But recently that hasn't been necessary, and 2005's fete day was another scorcher. This well-dressing came from Thornhill House, and several of the residents and staff were also here, sat watching from the shade of the surrounding trees, alongside the Crestbrook Band, who were now entertaining us with their concert repertoire. There were hits of a different sort and misses at the Coconut Shy, all part of a quintessentially English village event that relies on the goodwill and hard work of the helpers and organisers, including the man with the microphone, Harold Richardson.
And the third prize to Sarah Lang. Long, is it? Sorry, it's this writing, I can't read it.
Back now to the story of that other local queen and her attendants. After a few days, Frank Hurst reported that the bees had now settled in their nucleus hive. So, that evening, when the little buzzers were all back home for the night, Neville put wood in toll and secured the lid in place so that he could move them a little up Moor Road to Hugh Wright's garden. By now the light was fading fast and time was of the essence, so I got roped in to carry this hazardous cargo to the spot that Neville had prepared for them. When he took the door plug out, I switched the camera into night vision mode and was just able to see the first few worker bees coming out to inspect their new surroundings. And as far as I know, they, or rather the subsequent generations of their family, are still here at work in the meadows under Longstone Edge.
Sunday is the brainchild of the Royal School of Church Music, to whom we are as a choir and a parish affiliated, to encourage congregations as well as choirs to celebrate and ponder on the role of music in worship. But there's also a growing concern that church musicians in some ways are an endangered species, and that a tradition of choral singing, which is centuries old and unique in this country, may be slipping away.
At the morning service on Music Sunday, any fears that the local choir was going in the wrong direction were answered in part by awards that were made to members of the junior choir.
Michael and Grace both qualify for their dark blue ribbons.
These ribbons, light blue, dark blue, and eventually red, are awarded locally on behalf of the Royal School of Church Music, and they record not only the chorister's increasing ability, but also the choir's ability to nurture its future.
You can go and have a gossip out there, yeah. No, of course not.
Megan was the first of the 2 new recruits who joined the choir in 2005, and Orlando was quick to tell her about the perks of the job.
You get paid to go off school, to go to weddings and have a lot of fun. Yeah. Now that is good.
The other new recruit, who has since left, is Eleanor.
Eleanor and Megan both get their surplices now, provided I can get them over their heads.
And today the 2 rookies earned their first metaphorical stripes.
Oops. Yeah, there we are. All right. Find the sleeves. There we are. That's very smart.
First of all, a very big thank you to all who made such a day of yesterday, the church fete. There were fewer stalls this year and less helpers, but an astonishing £1,700 was raised after expenses, which is £100 more than last year. And now there are others here who are looking forward to this next item. I published the banns of marriage between Simon Anthony Headington, bachelor of this parish, and Michelle Cryer, spinster of this parish.
In July there's an end-of-term concert and a sports evening at the village school, and in 2005 we got permission to film both events, but only for the archive, so all our footage of children at school is under wraps until at least 2019, by which time the youngest will be 18.
Running race, hats and bags race, hopes and tunnels, waiters race.
Fortunately, we did get the paperwork right for the preschool sports day, so we can include a glimpse of some of this area's youngest budding athletes.
Go!
And it's a cracking start to the fried egg and spoon race. Here's Katie, but she doesn't know that she's dropped her egg. Well, she does now, so it's a 1-horse race with Alistair, the winner. Who's the best runner in this group?
Me. Beat me because I beat everyone.
Go!
Grandparents, helpers, mums and dads all took advantage of the lovely weather to come along and cheer on the competitors, and even have a go themselves.
This one is for Amelia.
Everybody from the top class got a leaving present, and along with all the other village children, the promise of cash prizes in the following week's Cricket Club Sports Day. This has been running since the 1970s, so the admin's down to a fine art. The first 3 in each race get coloured cards, which are changed into money by Les Williams.
Number 3, what's your name? Tessa. And what's your second name, Tessa? And what's your third name?
And the winners just keep coming.
you say, I couldn't tell. Your tummies were on the line together.
A dead heat means 2 60p first prizes. But oh, have these girls changed their mind? No, it's the beanbag fetch and carry race. There's sacks of fun for almost everyone. Officials, spectators and runners.
I got £1.40 so far.
The dressing up race is one of the favourites, but it helps if the clothes in your lane are your size.
I can't see properly.
Right, all the ladies at the beginning for the ladies' egg and spoon race.
Everyone move out of the way.
I couldn't get in the sack, else I'd have won.
It'll be near 100 years.
Great.
And the window will be back as it normally should if the parish council will let me.
And replacement of shop window, Fred Mellor, Great Longstone. That was granted, wasn't it?
That planning decision came through back in April, and at the end of July, the village butcher's shop got a facelift to mark its 99th birthday.
Sit on the bead arch, put it to the back. Right back to the... That's it, lift it up.
Many hands and a couple of hammers made light work of the job. And so it's Fred's window that gives us our final glimpse of Longstone life in the hectic month of July. Inevitably, most of the stories in this village video are centred on Great Longstone itself. But now it's time to turn the spotlight onto our smaller communities. We've already seen how the refurbishment of Longstone's tennis court exercised the parish council for the best part of the year.
Right,
Well, in our smaller hamlets, parish pump democracy works somewhat differently. At these parish meetings, it's the residents themselves who vote on the issues at the heart of their communities. At Little Longstone, an average of 3 meetings a year are held in the Monsell Head Cafe. At this meeting in 2007, one of the topics under discussion was the provision of a bus shelter at Monsell Head.
This type, having glazed panels, is to replace the stone brick and wooden solid shelter, so it would be a glass shelter.
They're also concerned that the design of the shelter would not be compatible with the surrounding environment.
The meeting's comments then get forwarded to the planning authority to help them to make the final decision.
I think at this point we need to decide whether we want a glass roof shelter in the parish.
Rowland doesn't have any public buildings, so their annual parish meetings have to be held in somebody's house. But they still attract a good turnout, including James Bentley and Judith Twigg, the district and county councillors, who can help the residents with their concerns about subjects such as quarrying and off-roaders.
We'd written to him about the 4x4s, and we had this response, which I think is from parts are from Hansard and parts are from his response.
Yes.
The problem we have is the bikers come round that corner and then they take off and they just rip that road to bits.
So welcome to the meeting, the Hassop Annual Parish Meeting for 2005.
This one takes place in the sumptuous surroundings of Hassop Hall. And today the agenda opens with reference to 2 local octogenarians.
I suppose we should just register that that notable pillar of society in Hassop, Mr. Joe Twigg, had his 88th birthday last Friday. We wish him much congratulations, I'm sure.
Well, I think the time has come to record that the other distinguished and somewhat elderly gentleman in the village, of course, died just recently. I'm referring to Father O'Neill, aged 86. I've no doubt most of you have read the obituary in Under the Edge. And I think it'd be appropriate if we just stood for a minute and remembered him. There were reference in the minutes that we approved at the last of the last meeting, I think, when I mentioned the application that Glebe had up at the Watersaw mine. It will be completely quarried and restored within 3 years, so I'm not too worried, and the Save Longstone group came to terms with that. But the up-to-date story now, of course, is Backdale has now moved on a bit, in the sense that the park did serve successfully the enforcement notices. Those notices have been appealed. This will now lead to a public inquiry towards the end of the year.
As well as quarrying, the meeting also discussed village finances and Hassett Hall's application for one of the new style, but potentially less restrictive, drinks and entertainments licences.
Well, of course, to be cynical, if he's not likely to use it, why is it applying? So if we didn't object, but we really wanted to do so, be in a position to do so later, we are to a certain extent cramping our style.
It clearly says here, it should be noted that although a licence may be granted for the hours requested, it is not the applicant's intention to use the licence every night of the week.
So if we used it on a Sunday night, it's used on a Monday night as well, so therefore we're not going to have it to bring it to the week.
It's not the staff.
Well, those were the sentiments that prevailed, and it wasn't long before the meeting was closed and everyone was enjoying a nibble and a natter in surroundings that eclipse those of your average village hall.
Before we kick off,
But that didn't deter a couple of dozen from attending the Wardlow annual meeting.
there's 2 meetings this evening. The first
This gathering dealt with topics such as the village green and speeding traffic,
I haven't noticed anybody slowing down particularly.
as well as the parish's income for the next financial year.
So we've actually got £452 in the account.
Would the residents like a tax-free year from the village meeting?
I'd like to propose that we leave at £150.
Right.
Yes, thanks.
Very close call. We preset for £150. Are there any other items of business, please?
You know the lane, back onto the Bingley Hill, when it's wet, it's a right buckle, and some years ago the Pig Park put some stone in it. They took it on the dumpers, I think, if I remember right. Yeah. Could it be approached to do the same? Because when it's wet, it's dirty and filthy now.
Okay, thank you very much. Date of next meeting.
And the parish meeting was immediately followed by one to discuss the future of the village hall itself.
Basically, the PCC have been talking to us for the last few months. They are concerned about the attendance in the church, and they're looking at ways that really they can keep the church open. One of the thoughts was that if the village hall wished to extend basically through this arch into the church, it would enable the village hall then to have larger events, and it would also enable the church to condense a little, but still have enough room for the service, and also enable them to have larger ceremonies for funerals and even weddings.
The church inevitably needs to cut its cloth to match its dwindling congregations, but should the village hall take up the slack?
It does seem to beg the question of what you want a village hall for, if nobody's going to come into it.
Yeah, that's right.
The fact is that throughout 2005, this village hall was only used on about 20 days for occasions such as the flower festival and well dressing, the by-election, the harvest supper, Derek Whiteley's nature seminars, and a 60s evening where you might just have spotted the Reverend Clive Thrower, our local vicar. His impending retirement and a reorganisation of parish groupings means that this building has an uncertain future. So the Village Hall Management Committee could soon have some difficult decisions to make.
The Village Hall Committee really needs some new blood. If anyone would be willing to help in any way, could they put their hands up now, please?
I'll put my hands up, but I'm willing to, because there must be one of the only people here.
But it soon became clear that things were on hold until a new vicar was appointed. So these residents have a little more time to consider the future of the heart of their community. And this month, things are looking pretty as a picture. And we're looking for prize produce and a new veranda. There's also busy bees and flocks of artists. And we've been turning up beetles, not in the fields, but with the over 60s. And some of us are still seeing red. But first, it's a downhill struggle for the village hall crew who are setting things up for Great Longstone's art show. It's quite a job getting these display boards into the school and set up in the classrooms and hall. And these busy bees scarcely have time for a tea break. But Peter Askew's on top of the job, and everything's ready for the following morning when the artists start arriving to hang their pictures.
Yeah, will you put your name on the top, please?
The show's organiser, Doreen Nicholson, of the Village Hall Management Committee, has seen the number of exhibitors increase threefold.
So hopefully we should still get our 100 quota this year.
Thanks to her,
I'll go there, because I feel it.
The artists, the visitors who browse and buy, and the volunteers who staff the galleries and provide the refreshments. Thanks to them all, by the time 5 o'clock comes round on Sunday,
Last sale of the day.
3, 2, 1, go for it.
And the exhibitors start packing up, the show has once again made a major contribution to Village Hall funds. A couple of days earlier, Tom Cox and his remarkably good-tempered champion Charolais heifer, Leek-Lowulla, had a successful visit to the Bakewell show, where they won a couple of blue rosettes, became reserve breed champion, and were part of the threesome that made the Charolais the interbreed champions.
Recreation ground, cricket club, cricket pavilion update on repair, excellent.
Back in June, the tea pavilion's leaking roof and general demise were the focus of a site meeting when the powers that be considered whether or not it was even worth repairing.
Jimmy Long has put the uprights in already, and now James across the way has ordered the tiles, and Terry Cox is providing the scaffolding.
And Martin Bradwell provided the manpower and the hammer.
So really, we're over the moon that it's all come together.
And now all it needs is a new front porch. Just up from the wreck, the school playground was being surfaced. And down at the Cavendish Hall in Enza, one Longstone resident was taking a privileged, critical look at a wide range of specimens. It's the Chatsworth Horticultural Society's annual show, and Frank Hurst is one of the judges, and his choices get rubber stamped onto the entry cards by Stan, his booking assistant. Are you allowed to do this?
Yeah, we just got them down. Check the colour and whether there's a lot of rings in them.
Frank's career as a show judge began back in 1954 when he was the head gardener at Longstone Hall, so he's had plenty of time to become well versed in the art and craft of judging vegetables and flowers.
Well, it just shows how wrong I could be, Frank, because to me that would have gone in first.
No, well,
that second and that third, because to me, no, please don't be offended by this, but I just stood back and looked at it, and I thought that was nice, actually.
Yeah, but this says mixed garden flowers.
Oh, mixed garden flowers.
Now you see you've got seeds, haven't you?
Yeah.
That's another one that's gone over.
That's right.
You've got grasses.
Yeah.
And you've got shrubbery.
Right.
Without flowers.
Right.
And you've got...
Yeah. You're quite right, sir. I stand...
So actually it's a mix. That's a mixed vase.
Right. I stand corrected, sir.
And following those insights from a competition judge of over 50 years standing, We're now invited to the conservatory at Thornhill House.
Are we ready?
And we're just in time for another competition.
Are we ready for take-off?
Well, like me, I just got 3 minutes. My head.
Yes, that's it.
It's Tuesday afternoon, and the local senior citizens are either taking it easy or taking part in this beetle drive.
Beetle. Oh, beetle.
Beetle.
Right, stop.
When they've finished beetling, Dorothy hands out these medical history
And that
tubs.
will be on your fridge door.
That's right.
So they would know to go in there, open this up.
And also these leaflets about a handyman scheme.
Now, if you wanted any work done in your garden, in your house, you can have it done through Help the Aged.
Happy birthday to you.
And it's Roy's birthday.
Great.
So everyone has a piece of cake with their cuppa.
Thank you very much.
And then gets signed up for the following month's coach trip.
And Roy?
Yeah.
And they're putting a wonderful tea on, so don't have any lunch. And I don't want any people to say, no, I'm on a diet. No. Because it's sandwiches, scones, cream, buns, trifle, the lot.
The lot.
Because of Great Longstone, there's 2 volunteer drivers. If you want to go anywhere, of course it won't cost quite as much.
Finally, there was an update on the local community taxi scheme. And then, before you knew it, the bus had arrived for the short trip back into the village. The following day it was rather wet when 2 of the parish councillors met up with the man from the Royal Mail.
We're meeting Daniel Lestrange to see if the post box could be moved. Half of the village want it moved and half of them are quite happy where it is.
Some would prefer it to be in a less conspicuous spot, down near the White Lion. But this alternative site may be too near to any existing underground services.
There's a power cable running down the section of the road.
Nevertheless, they did find a likely spot on the inside edge of the grass.
Well, I've got no objection to it going in here.
No.
But once you've made the decision, if you write to me and let me know.
Well, they did, and the box got its first letters in its new position 9 months and 3 days after that rather wet meeting back in August. Long, long ago, our local countryside was wild and unwelcoming. Slowly over time, generations of farmers, miners and acts of enclosure have created the patchwork patterns and limestone tracery that we all prize so much today. This triumph of man over nature is all the more enjoyable for those of us who don't have to do any of the hard work to keep it this way. That responsibility falls largely on the shoulders of the few remaining farmers, whose continuing stewardship, along with the national park, keeps this part of the peak looking at its best. And that's why those who nurture and protect our landscape belong squarely at the heart of the community.
Remember when I was a little girl, you couldn't get into the house or into the buildings, you know, for snow. You can't imagine how my dad used to manage when they used to milk, can you? You know, all by hand and, oh, dear me, no water, you have to carry the water. And how did they manage? We've got it easy, haven't we?
Well, everything's relative, of course, and Linda Wood's reminiscences of Longstone Moor Farm, before it had mains electricity, running water, or a tractor, remind you just how hard it was farming up here in her father's day, when he turned what was a run-down gamekeeper's cottage into a thriving sheep farm. But Linda, Colin and Peter have all followed William Wood's footsteps, and their flocks still graze the moorland and make the most of this hard-bitten landscape. In late February 2005, there was a pretty covering of snow down in the valley. But up here there was enough to disrupt the quarrying.
Yes, terrible.
So what's the plan for today? What happens?
Well, there's feeding the sheep That's the biggest job. There's cows inside to see to. These are some calves that they've just weaned. We only weaned them on Monday. These have brewer's grains, nut corn, and then they have the silage. I shouldn't drop off though, it's quite
This
heavy,
sort of traditional animal husbandry is hard work, and it needs lots of muscle.
That's the old way of farming in here, but we're cutting that out now as we all get older.
But hard work keeps you warm on a day like this, so Francis gets his back into measuring out the brewer's grains for the beasts in the barn.
These are me heifers off me cows, and I keep these for breeding. So keep them till a 2-year-old and then put them to the bull.
This mix of grains and sugar beet is for the sheep, whilst Linda protects her farmer's lungs from dust and spores as she refreshes the animals' bedding in the barn and prepares to top up their drinking water. The feed mix is sweet and nutritious, and the transport box on the tractor holds just enough for the sheep in the outlying fields.
No, not ready. She's not ready yet. Is she? Wait a minute. Yes, she is now, look.
Once Lulu and her calf have been sorted, Linda can catch up with Francis for feeding the sheep.
They're not all here because of some of the Kendall roughs. They're with the sheep still. It's got a bad foot, that one. These are the Texels, the white face ones. Suffolks are the black face. The Gritstones are the ones with the black and white face.
The flock are out on Black Harry and Betony Cobb, and each lot get their rations of feed mix, as well as having their silage shaken and stirred before Linda and Francis can get back to the farm for their own well-earned lunch.
Are you sure?
What seems like a world away from winter on the moor, although in reality it's less than a mile and barely a month, here's another of our local farmers, Robert Thornhill. His dairy herd are synchronised so that they all calf together in early spring, which means that he gets 8 weeks off from the otherwise everyday job of milking. This spring block calving is part of a system pioneered in New Zealand, where dairy farmers have increased their efficiency, starting at the grassroots.
The more readings that you take, the more accurate you're going to get.
This high-tech pogo stick is a rising plate pasture probe.
Right, we've got an average height of 16.6, and to press that, the average cover on this field with the current equation is 2,715 kilograms of dry matter per hectare.
In other words, it measures how much grass you've got.
And then you can work out the area that you need to provide for the cows in order to get the grass down to the level that we want. The residual height is one of the most important things because that governs the quality of the pasture on the regrowth. The idea is to maintain a wedge effect over all the fields on the farm, so that you've got the field you came out of yesterday, of course, is the shortest, and then you've got the longest to go into next.
Block calving in spring reduces costs because every cow produces as much milk as possible from inexpensive grass. And the location of Robert's fields, along with the management of the farm infrastructure, means that he can get the herd out into the fields for more of each year.
Most of our ground is gently sloping and luckily for us has a southerly aspect, so it catches as much sun. It's free draining with the limestone rock underneath, so it can warm up very quickly when it stops raining. But the other big difference, of course, is how things are managed with the construction of the cow tracks, which allow me to bypass fields that are being grazed or that I don't want to. That in effect does make the farm drier because it gives me more flexibility, and that's a big issue. If I had to access all my fields through one gateway close to the farm, it would become a complete quagmire.
3 weeks previously, there was still snow in the air on Longstone Moor. There's recently been a case of TB in a beast on a neighbouring farm, and all possible contacts have to be checked.
This is Kate from Overdale Veterinary Centre at Buxton. She's come to do the TB, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Testing today of the cattle.
At least they're in.
This weather?
Do you want anything
Yes, but I was also expecting to be inside doing small animals today. But never mind.
Linda's brother Peter, as well as Francis and neighbour Stuart, are here to help move the animals.
But this is a bovine one.
Oh, I see,
This one
yeah.
goes on the bottom.
Yeah.
This is an avian one that goes on the top. Yeah. If the avian reaction's bigger than the bovine reaction, then
Oh.
it's if the bovine reaction's bigger than the
I see.
avian.
Yeah. Right.
Because they can have the avian,
Yeah.
and so they can react to the bovine TB, but it's not. They haven't got bovine. They've got
I see.
avian.
Yeah.
Oh. Which is why.
So that's the theory, now for the practice. Kate starts by finding a suitably fleshy part of the neck, and then she gives the cow 2 jabs. After 48 hours there'll be 2 small swellings, and the relative sizes will indicate which type of TB, if any, the animal has reacted to. For now she enters its unique registration details onto her log sheet. But on a small farm like this, animals are more than just numbers. This one's called Lulu.
That's the one that you couldn't carve, do you remember?
How can we forget when it's 4 o'clock in the morning? Yeah. Well, it was a calf coming backwards, and there was just the tail, and both back legs were right forward underneath. So we put in all the anaesthetic to do a Caesar, and she was jumping around so much it managed to move the calf, and we could get it out in the end.
It takes all morning to work their way through the entire herd, which were all reared here on the farm.
You don't think I used to run about with her on her altar, would you, when she was little? Hey, Stuart? No, you wouldn't. I wouldn't like to do it now.
To lose any of her cattle to TB would be a great loss. But for now, all that Linda can do is wait for Kate to return in 3 days' time and hope.
What tractor is it?
It's down here.
This is where the cows are milked, and Bob milks them twice a day, 6 o'clock in the morning, and then they're milked again at 5 o'clock at night. Come in for milking, please. Is it Daisy and Molly? Come on,
Longstone Preschool are on a visit to home farm at Hassop, where Bob Dilks has a dairy herd of British Friesians.
Cleaning the others up before we start milking.
Unlike Robert Thornhill with his New Zealand method, Bob manages his herd along traditional British lines.
How many cows have you got? Not in milk? There's 70 in milk, but there's 100 in the herd.
This herd produces milk all year round and gets Bob a better price per litre than if he had a spring block calving regime. But of course he does have higher feed costs to produce milk in the winter. He also has to cope with the fact that every cow is at a different stage of her lactation cycle and therefore needs different amounts of supplements depending upon her milk production.
Tend to record them once a month, and then as they get heavier in calf or further into the lactation, then they just sort of drop off. So this cow here, she calves in July, August, so she's only on sort of 4 pounds.
The bands of coloured tape on the cows' tails indicate what rations they're each on, and Bob sets the automatic feeder to give them each the right amount of corn whilst they're being milked.
One thing, there's a lot of TB around at the moment. If you buy cows from Staffordshire area, you stand a good chance of bringing TB into the herd.
Mention of that disease brings the testing at Longstone Moor Farm back to mind, and we'll find out what the results are in the second best in the field, which follows shortly. September was another month full of sport and activity, and first off, it's the first Bakewell Brownies. And after 4 days, they were definitely getting D-Mob happy and ready to go home for a rest. But a week or so later, they were in the village hall providing refreshments for the Chatsworth Challenge walkers.
How are we doing? All right? Still in one piece?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
193 and
194.
So you're on the front? It is indeed.
I find it weird like that.
Oh dear. Superstars, what's that all about then?
Josie's doing a sponsored walk.
Right, and how far is that you walking?
9 miles.
9 miles.
From Blackwell to Bakewell, along the Monster Trail. I'm Josie. She's Jessie. That's Nellie. That's Nellie then. That's Eliza. That's Izzy. That's Ellie. That's Jack. And that's Hannah. We've been walking a long way. A long way.
And they were still on a high as they steamed through to Millersdale and then clickety-clacked along the old railway line. Back now along the riverside and just past halfway, and the task is beginning to tell.
How are your feet doing?
Not good.
Not good?
Mine are fine. Mine are fine. Yeah, mine are fine as well. I'm on TV!
How's your feet though?
They hurt. They're fine. Well, we're all doing all right, but there's 2 at the back which are lagging behind a lot.
So it was beginning to look as though they might not get beyond Monsell Dale.
Have we done the whole walk now? No. Mum, do you have to go all the way to Bakewell? Can't we just stop off at Longstone?
But a break for lunch and a foot-reviving paddle in the waters of the Wye
Freezing!
spurred them on for the final leg.
Roll over, so we all roll over and one fell out, smack on the floor and the guts fell out.
This 15-kilometre trek had been no mean feat, so as Bakewell Station beckoned, Josie could feel well pleased that with help from Sister Eliza and their friends and sponsors,
together we've probably raised about £250.
to help Food Aid and the people of Niger who they'd seen on television suffering a devastating drought.
Even in good years, only just enough grows in this barren expanse.
Of course, our climate is very different, but the importance of a secure water supply can be taken as read. And it's one reason why the ancient ritual of well dressing is still with us, even though Prim Roberts' watery inspiration at Wardlow this year is salty rather than spring.
We're very lucky at the time we do our well dressing because there's lots of seeds and berries.
Rowan Berry Red, hand-picked by Janet Robinson from the edge of the moor, and Cottage Garden Hydrangea Blue are just 2 of the colours in the completed tableau which commemorate this famous naval engagement of 1805. The 5 panels were soon hoisted aloft, and before long everything was shipshape and Wardlow fashion.
And bless now, O God, this well in your name. Amen.
3 weeks later, Wardlow held its traditional harvest supper, and after the main course there was a musical dessert served up by pupils from Lady Manners, including a portion of Debussy, played by Lizzie Davis from Great Longstone. Now, what's the connection between being a vicar and a piece of cake?
It's a caricature, at least. Oh, lovely. Oh, dear. What's this here? Around the back. Oh, right. Let's have a look. All right. Oh, yes. Oh, that's wonderful.
The Reverend Clive was celebrating 25 years in the ministry, and these depictions of his Sunday job and his local interests were the icing on the cake. Now, earlier in the month, those bells had announced the wedding of Michelle and Simon Headington. And whilst we're on the subject of matches, Longstone didn't actually have a team
Clean bowl.
in the local league.
He's skied it.
But they did play a few games during the season.
He's dropped.
Including this one against local rivals Tideswell.
Straight to the boundary. That's a 4.
They got 76 and we got 77 for 9.
And when the mist cleared, we could see that Church Lane had had a new layer added, whilst the churchyard had had a bit taken off by Michael Watson for the last time before he retired from his municipal horticultural duties.
This is an inquiry into the appeals made by Bleaklow Industries Limited and MMC Mineral Processing Limited.
The Backdale situation should have been resolved at this inquiry, but it soon became apparent that there wouldn't be enough time to hear all of the evidence, so the inspector adjourned the hearing until there was a long enough gap in everyone's diaries, and that wasn't until the following April. So, in the meantime, we'll turn to another sort of quarry here in the Longstone area. This quarry is a two-legged one, and the pursuers are the Four Shires bloodhounds. The sport is called hunting the clean boot, and the hounds use their dogged sense of smell to follow a human trail and give their mounted entourage a bit of a gallop. Today they're only exercising, but it's just as well that they weren't here on the first Friday in the month, because then they'd have been spoilt for the choice of scents to follow, since it was Fell Race Day, as we'll hear from Nick Casey.
And this year the junior event had 15 runners. Ellie took the lead at the croft,
followed by brothers Harry and Chris,
and she's setting a cracking pace as they climb out of the village towards Stansell Dale in the warm late summer sunshine.
Now the leaders are halfway up the dale, and Chris has really turned on the gas.
And by the time he gets into Hardrake Lane, he's 17 seconds ahead of Ellie and Harry.
But the race isn't over yet, because several of the front runners take a wrong turn.
And when they get back to the village, it's Luke who's leading the charge.
Well done.
Just ahead of Harry, Alistair
and Harry.
First boy back, Luke, and the first girl was Ellie. Then we've got the infants. First infant back was Harry. Well done, Harry. Everybody else gets a certificate. So Jake, well done. There you go.
The main event of the evening, the Great Longstone Chase, started an hour later, and there were 114 adult competitors who ran up to the moor and back again, under clear blue skies and a flotilla of hot air balloons that had drifted this way from a rally at Chatsworth.
Emma, Tom and Vic were in one of them, and whilst they got the best overview of the race,
we got the close-ups and saw Lloyd Taggart storming home a minute and a half ahead of his closest rivals. This year there were only 5 local runners who got round the course, so the village's main involvement was in making the race happen, under the leadership of organiser Peter Askew.
Ryan Edwards won the first 3, John Spencer run the next one, and I've run it ever since.
Just to be clear, when you say running it, you don't mean...
Organising it, not running it. My God, I don't get the running it, organising it.
He makes an absolutely first-class job of it. And as I say, you don't realise how good it is until you see some of the others. They don't run half as well as this is.
Female runner has had a bit of a tumble up here. She's going to walk back.
The first local runner goes to Paul Addison. The first local lady home goes to Rebecca Kay.
This village is a community. That's why it's a great place to live here.
Three days ago, Linda Wood's cattle had their TB reactor jabs. Today's the day that she gets the results. In this second part of our feature about the custodians of our local landscape, we're back at Longstone Moor Farm, as Kate the vet checks the beasts for telltale swellings after their recent TB inoculations. The size of these bumps reveals if the animal's carrying the harmless avian or the deadly bovine strain of the disease. If an animal's got this one, it will have to be destroyed and the herd put in quarantine.
Right. Crossing my fingers.
It's all very tense as Kate double checks this borderline beast.
4-4, so they're raised the same.
What does that mean then, Mrs. Woman?
It means she's okay.
Oh, thank goodness for that.
But there are still some more animals to check, including Lulu and her bull calf,
Back!
who obviously remembers that Kate normally carries a hypodermic.
Right, lovely.
What's the result? Clear. Ha!
Clear.
Clear. for another year. We hope. Oh well, it's a relief. You know, you always just wonder a little bit, don't you?
All is well, and Linda can take a moment to relax before we're back with her again at lambing time. It's now mid-April, and the new season's lambs are already out in the fields near Hassop, and they're also catching the eye of Linda's visitors at Moor Farm.
We started on the 8th of April.
So you have 3 or 4 weeks of bedlam.
Yeah.
Most of the ewes manage to lamb on their own, but those needing help are brought into the shed so that Linda and Francis can keep an eye on them and give nature a helping hand.
Come on, kid, your ears are cold. Come on, yeah. Oh, into your greasy
She's
gland.
slimy,
That's it.
yeah.
Look, she's wanting a little drink.
Yes.
Come on, Mum. She got any milk? That's it, you tip the plate. So Francis, just come and hold the sheep for me, will you please? There, Tom. That's it. It's because she's a first time lammer, she doesn't know what's just quite...
What's what?
And if they have a bit of a bad lambing, it takes them quite a while to get over it. There we are, look, he's sucking now, see? That's it, there we are, he's away. Isn't that lovely? Peter will come in after, and then he'll come in and he'll ring them all up, castrate them and tail them, and then it doesn't hurt them. Because if you do it when they're about a month old, it's very cruel. This is a sheep. Put her in the lamb adopter, with 2 lambs on, twin to this one, and she went and laid on it. The other one, brother to this one. All ready, Fran? Good job Francis is here to do all this heavy lifting.
This lamb adopter is a set of crates which holds any reluctant mum until she accepts her new lambs, and some are quicker than others.
Now the other day, a sheep came in, she'd lost her lamb, and I tied her up and put her orphan lamb on her, and at dinner time I let her off and she'd taken to it just like that, and she's in the croft now, and it's funny how they're so quick.
The National Parks Vision Project brings farmers, landowners and conservationists together to restore wildlife and habitats throughout all of our area and more.
It goes towards a challenge badge. Yeah, that's about those ponds and the haymen.
This one here is a bitter vetch. I imagine the name comes from the fact that these species are picking out the sort of more acid grassland.
Most of my botanical knowledge extends to either grasses or weeds.
Violets here.
Today, Project Officer Rebecca Newman has met dairy farmer Robert Thornhill on his summer pastures on the edge of Longstone Moor.
And that's a sedge as opposed to...
Rebecca's introducing Robert to some of the resident flora. Although his main dairy herd feed on intensively managed ryegrass, these fields are part of a conservation scheme, so they're rich in wild flowers, and Robert believes that this is beneficial for the young stock that he keeps here.
What prompted me with that was that I had a sick cow, and the vet said, have you got somewhere where there's plenty of broad-leaved weeds and some herbage, get some magnesium into her? And I thought, well, not really, but I found a little corner in the farm and put her in there. And it started the ball rolling. I started to think, would there be a mixture available that could coexist under the farming regime and provide those benefits and give a more holistic diet?
Certainly there's 1 or 2 farmers I know who really are going out of their way to keep a few fields like this, purely for that reason, and because some of the stock just seem to really thrive on it.
So it doesn't only look good, but it also does them good.
Lead rakey areas as well.
And they probably don't mind about the humps and bumps across this patch.
This is all part of Cackle-Mackle Scheduled Nature Monument, which extends all the way across the moor as well. And you can see all the lead rakey bits across the moor.
The irony, of course, is that I wanted to do some mining today, I would have to reinstate afterwards, and the chap that dug this didn't. so it's like, you know what?
That he didn't reinstate.
Well, yes, it is. But you know, sometimes I wonder whether we're not making history anymore. 2 weeks ago.
Well, despite all that, there's one local quarry that seems determined to go down in history, whether we like it or not.
If you've been on the walks before, I think you'll notice a significant change. And I think a lot of you will be horrified.
Led by botanist Steve Furness, this walk is an example of people power. helping to stiffen the backbone of the Peak Park planners in their fight to save this part of the edge.
One of the bee orchid sites is down on this side of this.
Whether or not Backdale is operating legally, the fact is that this cache can be seen from miles around, so its environmental impact is pretty obvious. The hillside's been quarried away and it's gone forever. Fortunately, it's a different story on top of the edge.
Although the area up there looks incredibly deep and is, they are going to fill it in. And this is part of the Glebe mine operation. They'll fill it in with the settling lagoon sludge mixed with limestone, and it apparently makes a stable mixture.
And then they'll put topsoil on and grass it over.
And actually they're in consultation with the Peak District National Park to get it back to some sort of species-rich habitat rather than just sort of ryegrass.
The whole of this expanse in front of us that isn't vegetated, that's going to be seeded in the next few weeks, because the park are very keen that we use locally harvested hay meadow seed.
Another local harvest from these uplands is wool, and it's now time to gather it in on Longstone Moor. All in all, there's about 1,000 sheep and only one clipper.
But these things you can certainly cut. You know what I mean? If you don't hold them right, you certainly if you get quite a lot of cuts on them, the trouble is, you can start off with a little cut like that, and when the flies are done pecking at it, it can be a hell of a thing, you know what I mean?
Shearing is one of those jobs that takes skill and strength, and almost a fortnight.
When they're all done, they all get stitched up and labelled, and they're going to lie then to Bradford, to wool board.
Only trouble is it's not worth anything.
And Linda's not the only farmer who thinks that nowadays it isn't only the sheep that are being fleeced.
It don't cover for the man clipping. That's what.
Outside, the new additions to the beef suckler herd are making the most of the summer sun.
We don't like to be calving in the winter because it's so cold up here, you see. It's better they can go out to grass. It's like Kate, aren't you, eh? She really ought to have gone as beef as a heifer, but with her being one of the favourites, I couldn't part with her, so. And she has the calves lovely, no trouble. I have a very easy calving bull, and she's fine. She's lovely.
But most of the time, it's a hard-headed business, coloured by numbers. And similarly, the shades of green that paint our landscape are the product of generations of management. They say that where there's muck, there's money. And round here it grows the grass that feeds the farming economy. Cattle, sheep and horses, conservation schemes and intensively managed dairy pastures where modern methods cut costs as well as grass. But against a backdrop of rural affluence, farmers' incomes have been squeezed by the superstores. Producers are middlemen on a collision course that has led to many farmers chucking it all in. But at Church Lane Farm, they've carried on doing what they've always done. So by now they're almost unique, because they still bottle and sell some of their own milk.
That was in the cow this morning at 7 o'clock. It's been milked since and then pasteurised.
Ian's first job is to sterilise the bottles. Now, they each cost 31 pence, so it's imperative that they get returned and reused as many times as possible. Nowadays, all the milk they sell in the village is pasteurised in this machine, which then cools it ready for bottling.
You usually have a cover on this, but I'll leave it off just for now and then you can see what's happening there.
The dispenser works a bit like an optic in a pub, only instead of serving a measure of spirits, it fills a row of milk bottles. Over the years, the design of the bottles has changed, and there are still a few old ones in the system, so Ian has to contend with 2 sizes of caps and 2 different presses to secure them. And now there's another type of container.
We started just doing the odd plastic one for people that can't bring the empties back.
Into the 21st century.
Well, if anybody looking at this in 3005 find it interesting, because I'm sure it won't be carrying on then.
Lovely, you can't get better than this, can you? Can I do an advert for you?
Yeah.
So what are you going to say then? What's the slogan for Cox Brothers Dairy then?
I don't know. It's probably not repeatable on there.
The first signs of autumn coincide with some more scrub clearing up on the edge and the Harvest Festival at St Giles. Outside in the village, the bright autumnal colours can fade on a wet afternoon, like the memory of when there were 8 shops along the main street here in Great Longstone.
You had Webster's at the bottom, then you had Dawson Butcher Shop, where Fred Miller is now, and then you had Mrs Fern immediately north of the White Lion, where she sold sort of haberdashery and all that sort of stuff. Then you had Hancock's, a grocery shop, followed by Mansfield's, Pashley's, grocery shop next door to the post office itself.
And opposite them was Shaw's, the village garage and petrol pump.
And then there was a little shop called Wages.
More recently, the Ellises had the shop, but that was long after Henry Adams first came to Longstone as a 4-year-old wartime evacuee. Back to the present, and a rather special day trip led to Little Longstone's Congregational Chapel, where Mick and Kathy, a couple from over the border in Yorkshire, tied the knot in one of their favourite places.
Walk on!
That ghostly, or should it be ghastly, American import of trick-or-treating reared its ugly head on Halloween as usual.
Hello.
But this year, one of the covens that haunted the village after dark did so in the pink, thanks to an idea by Melissa MacDonald and help from her sister Emma.
The night had a flying start with spooky games, yucky potions, and turning daddies into pink mummies. We then went on to the best bit, the trick-or-treating of course. We spooked our way around Longstone, we shook our charity box and devoured a plentiful supply of sweets. We were frozen to the bone, but even the rain couldn't dampen our spirits.
Hello.
A huge thank you to everyone who donated money and sweets. It was much appreciated. We raised a total amount of £94 for breast cancer care.
My name's Ted Ward, my wife Margaret, Bessie Hingley. Between us, we're responsible for running the Great Longstone Bridge Club. It was founded 20 years ago by Bessie's husband Derek, and it's never looked back since.
And the Bridge Club is just one of the groups that regularly meet in Great Longstone's Village Hall. There's also snooker.
God bless you. We're glad you came.
And Tiny's Play and Praise, and further education classes that range from antiques to computers.
Another one at this site here.
There are local history meetings every month,
What the evidence now shows,
and the embroidery group completes this introductory picture. But there's more to this village hall than just a hall in a village. There's also the committee. And since 1995, members of the committee have also been the trustees of Great Longstone Village Hall, which is now a registered charity. The old Social Institute had its constitution changed so as to take advantage of the tax benefits that come with charitable status. And now, as well as running the hall itself, the committee puts on fundraising events with a view to supporting local good causes. Both the fell race and the art show was started by Brian Edwards, and his work is continued today by Village Hall Chairman Peter Askew, seen here back in 1996, when he was one of the helpers at the second running of the Great Longstone Chase.
We wanted to get a course that was suitable for the average person and people who are doing fell races week in, week out during the season. And the most important thing to do is to spread them out before they get onto Spring Bank. Now, the best way to do that is to actually get them to run round the perimeter of the field, and very soon this tight bunch becomes a long string. And so hopefully we can get through the opening over there without too many difficulties. I mean, it can be quite dangerous because things like gate posts and so forth get in the way. So we've got to make sure that we sort of spread them out as quickly as possible.
But the main purpose of a village hall is to provide a venue for local meetings. And as well as those groups mentioned earlier, there's the WI and the Friday Night Whist Club.
Tonight is a partner whist drive. It'll cost us £1 each and £1 for the raffle. And we'll see what we can make of it.
Well, the WI are making for Handforth and a pre-Christmas visit to the Lakeland Emporium for a spot of lunch, followed by a browse through the kitchenware. 40 years ago, the village hall offered a similar experience because back in the 60s, this was where the local school meals were served, although the fare on offer then probably didn't compare with that at this year's Rogation Day charity lunch.
Right, what we're going to do now is to walk up the road until you see a gateway on the left-hand side. And remember what I said about health and safety.
The local history group, like the WI, also have meetings out on the road. And in 2005, as well as trips to Lincoln and Sheldon, they crossed the border into Little Longstone, led by local historian Michael Stewart.
And when he died, he gave it to his friends in the village. So we have a lovely list of people who lived in Little Longstone in 1795.
More recently, 1907 saw another occasion for recording a local who's who, the opening of the Social Institute, which was built to provide a meeting place that was free of creed and denomination and where all could meet on common ground for the common good. It was opened by Mr. Britton, a Manchester industrialist who had recently moved to Great Longstone, and he hoped that it would be a means of providing amusement, entertainment and education for the villagers, and would help to deter the rural population from being driven to the nearby cities in search of factory wages and 20th century facilities. 100 years on, and Longstone's survival as a popular place to live may not be entirely due to the presence of this one particular building, but it's fair to say that Great Longstone wouldn't be what it is today without a village hall at the heart of the community.
from the rutter, then we all get back together to do the pike it. It just breaks the rehearsal up. Go on.
My granddaughter stuck the pages of my packet together.
Yes, well, there we are. I couldn't say a lot, but I will. We're now going to rehearse movements 2, 4, 5 and 6. Could you stand, please? Here it is.
After the excitement of choir practice at Bakewell and Guy Fawkes' Night in Great Longstone, here's another notable event from November 2005.
What happened? Was it ice or was it the...
Ice.
Yeah.
No gritters had been out.
No. At about 8:15, a bargain booze lorry skidded off the road just past Skew Bridge and ended up on its side in the field next to Toll Bar House. Before the stricken vehicle could be recovered, its load had to be taken off so that it could be hoisted back onto its wheels and then slowly pulled out of the field. A tricky job which was finally completed at about 1:30, although of course it was several weeks before the damaged wall was put back together again. Every other Tuesday, the mobile library comes to our area, and here it is at Rowland on a bright but still frosty in the shade November afternoon.
Well, there only seems to be one other person down the road who comes on, so it's a good job I'm an avid reader, isn't it?
It is,
well, makes it worth your while.
Absolutely, yes.
That's right.
Rowland and Monsell Head each get one 10-minute visit, whereas Great Longstone gets 4, including this one by the village green, where one of their younger customers was choosing a book.
See if you can find another Thomas book.
Another familiar character from these shelves links neatly into our next group of village visitors, represented here by Postman Jim. He's one of the 2 regulars who deliver to the part of our patch that's served by the Bakewell delivery office. The west of the area, namely Wardlow and Monsell Dale, are just over the border in the Stockport postal area, and this boundary creates an interesting anomaly.
You can post a letter in the box at the top of Monsell Head for the farm in the bottom, which you can see, and it will be picked up in the afternoon by our collection men, taken on a run around Derbyshire. If you go to Matlock, if you go on a big lorry to Derby, then it'll either go on a lorry to Stockport or a lorry to Crewe, and back to Stockport, back to Buxton, and then to the farm in the bottom in the morning. And you can see it a couple hundred yards down the road.
Back into Longstone now for a quick look at David Byrne's print room before it comes to the end of its run. These premises, which were a co-op in the 60s and Hancock's Groceries before that, will reopen in spring 2006, offering holistic therapies and beauty treatments. And on the subject of pampering, whatever the weather, you'll find one local enthusiast out in the garden every Saturday morning with his hosepipe, sponge and shampoo, making sure that his pride and joys are in pristine condition.
Might not know how to do many things, but I know how to wash a car.
And that's especially true when it comes to this little lady, whose youthful sparkle belies her 1955 vintage.
One of the best morris miners in the country. I compete in all the top concourse competitions and things.
There's more digging just started up on Longstone Edge, but this new excavation is on a more modest scale, involving trowels and a wheelbarrow, and some very cold extremities.
Yes, how do you keep your fingers warm?
They're not.
These archaeologists from Sheffield University are here at High Rake on Longstone Edge to investigate and record this prehistoric burial mound that was damaged by contractors who were putting up a new fence around the quarry workings. and we're here in the November chill to see what they're doing.
I'm going to say you have some gloves on.
It's good to be shoveling lots of material because it keeps us warm. It's about -1 today, so luckily we're not right on top of the hill, but this is supposedly the less windy side, but it's still pretty windy all the same.
And many sunsets later, the archaeologist's report was able to shed some light on the history of the site, including the fact that it must have been a favourite nesting place for owls. And on this chimney, there's a sea owl.
It's got specially designed vanes. Rotate whichever direction the wind's coming from and induce an updraft.
You don't want the thing going on and off again, do you?
Alan and Howard have just fitted a new chimney cowl, and in the process they've found a slate that slipped because it had only been fixed by one nail, which had now rusted away.
They've had a nail hole there, but they've missed one there.
They did that a lot. Just put one nail in instead of two.
But you won't hear Alan grumbling about the men who built these houses back in the 60s, because, well, he was one of them.
Well, I saw the advert on TV for you could do something for children in need, so I ordered a fundraising pack and there was loads of ideas in it. So I decided to do this and came up with what to do.
And in December's Under the Edge, Alice was able to report on her successful morning for children in need. Back to November, and Carver Village Hall was the venue for the Save Longstone Edge Group's AGM, where once again the main topic was quarrying at Backdale.
This is the area in which there is this famous 1952 admission.
And it's the legal interpretation of this 50-year-old document that's at the heart, or rather the wallet, of this controversy.
And the tactic is to buy as much time as they can, while as much of Longstone Edge disappears down the road.
There was a good turnout from our villages, including John Lomas of the Peak Park, which got a bit of a slating for not being more proactive.
Now the duty of Peak Park is to protect Peak Park. And if they're not willing to take the gamble on this, to take the risk, I have to ask myself why they're there at all.
Well, that response summed up the mood of this meeting, and a couple of months later, the Peak Park did actually issue a stop notice to limit operations at Backdale. But as we now know, the company simply moved on to Wagers Flat. And the arguments about the meaning of these words were rehearsed all over again. Rehearsals of a different kind were underway at St Giles for the junior choir's Christmas nativity play. And in the West End of the same venue, another young starlet was about to get a name for herself, as her nearest and dearest gathered round the font, looked on with pride.
Cordelia Ava Jane, I baptise you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Grow not old, we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Oh God,
Another red-letter date from the local calendar that's been observed since 1923, when the War Memorial was unveiled, is Remembrance Sunday. And after the wreath-laying, the choir and congregation returned to St Giles to continue the interdenominational service. And finally, another traditional site that's getting rarer by the year. A coal delivery. And this one was just a few days before the first snow of the season, which gave the village and the livestock that were still outside an early taste of winter at the end of November. So far in this village video from 2005, we've looked at several of the local institutions that could be said to be at the centre of local life. Now it's time to round up a few more and see which has the best claim to being at the heart of the community. Let's start with a quick look at the village schools. Both the preschool and the Church of England primary school are very popular, and parents get involved in everything from fundraising to the Christingle service. The school buildings are used for village events, like the church fete and the art show, ensuring that the school is a centre of gravity for people of all ages. The 5 local churches and chapels generate a spirit of community within their own congregations, but they also reach out to the wider community. A mundane example from St Giles is the church clock, and this particular one's been marking the quarter hours since the 1870s. Its reassuring chimes a constant reminder in this landlocked county that time alone waits for no one. So it's just as well that the person who's wound it for the last quarter of a century has done so regular as clockwork.
It's 6:30 and I'm on my way up to wind the church clock. I usually do it on a Sunday morning and a Wednesday morning. Coming towards the church now, just have a quick look up at the clock face. To make sure it was the right time. Just have to wind it usually just after it strikes, not before it strikes. Not just before it strikes isn't ideal for it. So I try and get up just after it's struck either the quarter or the hour. Well, I must just mention at this point Valley Steward stands in for me and I can't do it.
The clock mechanism is positioned halfway up the tower because it's driven by weights, and twice a week they have to be rewound back to the top of their travels.
And then just... This is the hour strike, this one.
As well as the actual clockwork, there are 2 different chime mechanisms, and all 3 have weights that have to be wound up.
That's it. I'm going to wind it again on Wednesday.
The chimes are produced by hammers striking on the church bells, so the belfry is quite a maze of metal frames, levers, control rods, and also the drive shafts to the hands on the clock faces, high up on the 2 sides of the tower that can be seen from the village. Now, the regular twice-a-week winding is one thing, but twice a year the clock has to be altered to and from summertime. In the autumn it's just a matter of stopping the clock for an hour, so that gives Nick a chance to catch up on his reading. In the spring the clock goes forward, and even though Nick does this in the early evening rather than the early hours, it's too dark for the neighbours to see just how quickly he can make time fly.
Go, just let it chime the quarter hour.
But of course the rapid succession of chimes lets you know when he's doing it.
Coming around now to the past. I'm going to set the clock for 20 to 9.
Of course he can't see the clock face from in here, but there is an indication of where the minute hand's pointing on this tally dial.
So it's just a matter of waiting for time to catch up with itself, as you might say.
And so when it has, Nick restarts the pendulum and clocks the fact that his reward for all this effort is that the following morning he'll have to start work an hour earlier. That day job, of course, puts the Casey family smack bang at the heart of the community. And we've already seen what they get up to, sorting and delivering the papers early on a dark winter's morning.
You know, you used to be thinking we could have had another half hour in bed.
Fortunately for the Cases, though, in the summer months the sun gets up even earlier than they have to, So for part of the year at least, they can actually see that they've got the early morning village all to themselves. Well, almost. For the rest of the day though, they're in the middle of a constant flow of local and passing customers, as they have been since 1961, when Neville and Iris took over this shop from the Websters.
Don't know whether they still had the library when your dad took
I think they did. They had the library and they used to sell quite a lot of underwear and things more of that sort of thing. Yeah. I think just the general way of life's changed. And people's shopping habits have changed as well. And of course there's more choice now. Supermarkets, of course, have taken more of a stranglehold than they had 10 years ago.
Do you want a lolly?
I don't know what to love now. That's lovely. 2 sprinkles is great.
We still deliver for older people. It saves them having to. I think they like to come down to the shop and have a look round and put down on the list what they'd like, and then it saves them having to carry it. You see, which is, I think that's the problem with supermarkets. I think as well. You've still got to carry your things back, haven't you? And as you get older, that gets no easier, does it?
Are the wine not English?
No.
No. I'll have English ones.
English ones, yeah.
Thank you very much.
It's like Chris is in this Gilman Sullivan now sort of thing. We try and work around each other. Otherwise, you let it control your life, and you've got to have a bit of life. Otherwise, you just get stale with it. I'd probably go off with a mountain rescue for a week or something, and we just try and work around each other. And it's a family business. You've got to, haven't you? Really.
We used to sell 15 ton a day, lad.
That's amazing.
There you are. You don't get that every shop you go in, do you?
You don't get that in every shop, that's right.
Neville was the most well-known man in the village, I would say. A man of many parts.
In 2007, the village was saddened to learn of the passing of Neville Casey. But Mike Taft's eulogy reminded us all just how fortunate we've been to have had such an institution at the centre of our community.
Under his guidance, Casey's has become a major focal point of our village as a mart for goods, news, views and advice. I cannot bear to imagine the village without this shop.
I don't know about that one, because I've not got any next generation and Chris hasn't, so I don't know. Tricky one that, really. I guess, hopefully, I suppose when we retire, it's probably be sold on us, unless something happens in the not too distant future. And there's nothing lined up in it, not from my point of view anyway. So apart from that, I don't really know. Yeah, it'd be nice to think it would carry on. Yeah.
It is.
In the end, it all comes down to money. A village shop can't survive if nobody uses it, so it's good to see the next generation of consumers from the village preschool learning about shopping close to home.
You're going to hold my hand. Okay, will you help me carry this?
As well as Casey's, there's Fred's Butcher's Shop and 9 hostelries and cafes in our patch, and whilst they all have a social side to their business, they are primarily commercial undertakings, and like every other local business, they're important for keeping the economic lifeblood flowing so that the area stays alive. Public transport's important, and not just for those who don't have a car. As well as the number 4, the 173 and the 175 connecting our area with Bakewell, Castleton and Eyam during the day, the 173 also does a couple of evening runs between Monsell Head and Bakewell, and on a Saturday evening you may find you're being driven by Great Longstone's Steve Barton, a self-confessed bus enthusiast who's been a part-time driver since 1975.
These particular vehicles aren't especially interesting to drive, and they just run converted vans really, but I like the people. Like I say, those are all regular passengers. I'm on first name terms with them. Just pick up all the gossip. I just, it's part of the community, and I like being out there. Where are you going, lads?
Hey, Chris, we nice. Put on the plate, pal. Have an enjoyable night. See you, Steve. See you, Steve.
So the local wheels of commerce get a little more oiled, and Steve gets on with the business of driving the 1019 back to Bakewell in time for a final run to Matlock. Today, most of our local businesses are small firms like these, But not that long ago, Longstone-based Thornhills was one of the major employers in this area. The site of their old factory is now the Longstone Business Park, where Foxer have their local depot.
We are a Spanish company and we carry out the street cleansing contract for Derbyshire Dales District Council. We also carry out the highway verge mowing, we empty the septic tanks and we empty all the litter bins that you see throughout the district.
Who else is in this yard?
This is New Haven, which was at New Haven. They've moved down here now. And then Derek Watson, he's the jag repairer.
And the other engineering company that's based here is Jimmy Long's.
Our main job is meat plants and abattoirs and stuff like that. And also commercial vehicles, as we're doing now. There'll be about 60 blokes work on it. Perhaps 20-25 work for folks other than Foxer. Yeah, so it's only a little sleepy place, but it's supports the community, doesn't it?
And these final snapshots of the local economic activity are adverts from the Peak Advertiser, the Bakewell-based fortnightly free paper. Now, the local monthly publication, with a name that puts it right at the heart of this community, is Under the Edge, which succeeded the old Parish magazine at the end of 1998. Brian Edwards had drawn on his previous experience to set up this community magazine, and in 2005 it's run by a management committee and editor Susie Barton, and every month she puts together a compulsive collection of news, features and correspondence. I've just composed a letter on my laptop that will be sent to Under the Edge for the February edition. I will send it as an email attachment to Susie Barton, and we'll see what happens to it then.
Yeah, anybody want to comment?
Inevitably, most of the letters and articles arrive just before the deadline, which coincides with writing up the parish council report. So Susie has to work on her computer late into the night to produce a draft copy for proofreading. Harry Clark then takes his red pen to the text to correct the spelling mistakes and improve the grammar and vocabulary.
He ends by saying that ought to be recorded, please let Hilary Clark or myself know. But it should be or me.
The corrected text then goes off to the printers, and a couple of days later it comes back to the village in Liz and Jim McDonald's boot. On this occasion, Sue Walker had come along to learn the ropes after having attended the group's committee meeting earlier in the month. These volunteers deal with everything from the adverts to the printers and the final link in the chain, the deliverers, who push the magazines through the 500 local letterboxes.
It's bringing the community together. Before we had this, we didn't know what was going on really. This is brilliant publication.
Well, you can't get much closer to the heart of the community than Under the Edge does. But you could say the same about all the other subjects that we've looked at, and no doubt several more besides. The truth is that in some way or other, they're all at the centre of local life. So presumably, our community has a very large heart.
All roll!
Give me everything you've got. Tackling, passing, you're probably one of the best passers. You look up and you know what you're doing. Pass, move, shoot, score.
Well, it's time to kick off the last of the monthly newsreels. And as you can see, we're starting with football.
We're the Ashford Baslow Longstone Football Club, yeah. We're playing Tidal Under-8s.
Well done, now follow it!
In the Derwent Valley League.
That's it, edge of the box! Jacob! Good boy!
Last year we were fortunate enough to win every game.
Come on!
And we won the league and we won the cup.
And for news of today's match, over to Nick Casey.
Ashford start the second half with a 1-goal advantage, and it's Sam who scored in the 4th minute to receive the ball from Michael.
These under-8 matches are played 7-a-side, and each half lasts 15 minutes.
William, that's Harry wearing the number 7 shirt. Alec. Sam, against 2, but he's kept possession. Michael, running into space, shoots, 2-0. Great shot from Michael, who joins Sam on the score sheet.
Always a nice one to win against Tideswell, but they're all nice to win. But as long as we all come off and we all had a good time, that's the main thing.
And here's another group of young stars who were also shining this month.
Some wise men from the east came to King Herod. Where is the one born to be king of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him.
That one, follow that one.
Well, Christmas is coming, and one of the first seasonal events at St Giles is the Junior Choir's Nativity Play. And because only a small proportion of the village are regular churchgoers, here's a chance for the rest of us to get a flavour of what we missed.
You are going to have a baby.
That's nice, getting married next month.
No. I mean you're going to have a baby now.
But now?
No, not at this very minute.
Yes. Well, if you really must know, the girl I'm going to marry was going to marry, who I thought was the sweetest. Oh well, it doesn't matter. Look, would you mind just going, alright?
Actually, I think it does matter. Go on, the girl you were going to marry.
These young thespians have, with help from their director, Kim Edmonds, written and staged this well-received production, and it leads us into our collection of local Christmas scenes from 2005. The residents, staff and their families were all in party mood at Thornhill House when this familiar face popped in to sample the mince pies and hand out the presents.
There you are, my dear. Happy Christmas.
Here in the village hall, the preschool Christmas party is in full swing and full volume as that man again rehearses the children through what must be his favourite song. Then, the following day, Peter, Robert and Angela Thornhill supply the church's Christmas tree, which, along with the nativity scene and birthday cakes, provides a backdrop for the Tiney's Play and Praise Christmas meeting. Every Christmas tree with its lights and decorations is a high point of the festive season, and this one adds an extra sparkle to the candlelit carol service.
Then we go to the Christmas tree, I think, and we sing carols.
The Christmas Eve pageant starts at the Crispin, where Mary and Joseph first inquire about accommodation.
Have you room for the night for Mary?
I'm sorry, there's no room at the inn. If you'd like to go down to the White Lion, see if we've got anything there. Cheerio.
Their route to the White Lion, accompanied by shepherds, angels and a donkey, takes them via the Christmas tree on the green, which is now overflowing with villagers and visitors alike, and the Bakewell Silver Band. But when they get to the White Lion, they're still out of luck.
Sorry, there's no room here. Try the market. Right, thank you.
So they end up at Church Lane Farm, where the carolling continues, and little Cordelia, who we met last month, gets to pose centre stage with Mary and Joseph.
We have come to the end of our retelling of the Christmas story, and on your behalf, I want to say a thank you to the Bakewell Silver Band.
Our next stop is Hassop Hall, where the St Giles Choir are serenading the diners at this Swish hotel.
Tidings we bring to you and your
And late on Christmas Eve, the choir are back in their robes and their stalls for a high church midnight mass. On Christmas Day, the Crispin, the White Lion and the Pack Horse are all doing a brisk lunchtime trade. And here it's not to the accompaniment of incense, this haze is cigarette smoke. The day after Boxing Day, it snowed, and these belated Christmas card scenes bring December, and indeed our year itself, almost to an end. The days, hours and minutes that once were 2005 are now long consigned to the scrap heap of half-forgotten memories. But those that survive in this video will continue to remind us about the community side of the village, a facet that seems to be constantly getting squeezed by the growing pace of our everyday lives. Our video year started in the Crispin, but we're seeing it out in the way that these days most people do, courtesy of television. So that's the end of this village video for 2005, except for some bread, marmalade and homemade wine to wash it all down. Yes, that's right, the ingredient for this final chapter is food, homemade food, and as well as the kitchen crafts of baking, brewing and preserving, we've also included a glimpse of Chris Rayner and myself as we mix the video ingredients for this last bite of Longstone life.
Teasing out the flour between my finger and thumb.
And this is the granary flour.
This is the granary flour, yes.
Use 4 pints of water to 2 pounds of oranges, Seville oranges.
Now that their children have flown the nest, Hilary, Janet and Angela are typical of those who have got time to indulge their taste for traditional country cooking.
That's the very last of the boiling water going in. The next step is to cream the yeast with some sugar. Here comes the sugar.
And you can feel the warmth. I can feel the warmth in my hands from the warm bowl. Yes.
Just stir till it's properly dissolved.
Then when that's dissolved, in go the raisins. This yeast is beginning to bubble up.
At this stage you have to watch it carefully because sometimes it boils over.
Mixed it all together and that should start fermenting by tomorrow.
This is the bit that takes about 10 minutes.
This is at the end of 5 days and the first vigorous ferment is over. Well, the bits have now arrived
And pour it into here.
and I think the theory is you don't overwork the dough at this stage.
So I'll put that on.
Well, the bread's had half an hour to prove. Once the bubbles will start going through, I'll be able to put it in a cooler place and leave it, and then perhaps in another 6 months I will bottle it. It looks done, yeah. Well, cheers! Cheers! Cheers!
Do you think we'd better offer something to the crew? What do you think?
Yes, I think it would be an excellent idea, actually.
Right, well there are some more glasses.
Yes, there's some glasses
Okay, shall I get
placed
them?
over there. There,
Let me put the camera down. Oh, it looks very nice.
It's a nice colour.
Which one is nice?
I think I'm going to top this up a bit, Frankie, so it looks like a bit of a small glass.
Oh, it's very good, Laura.
It is, isn't it?
Thank you, Janet.
Chateau Clark.
God.
Oh, hello, Chris. There's a glass for you on the table. Cheers.
Cheers again. Cheers.
Cheers.
And as well as thanking everyone who helped to capture this glimpse of a year in the life of Greater Longstone, we mustn't forget Awards for All, the Derbyshire Dales and the late Eric Heath for the donation and grants that supported this project. But of course we couldn't have filmed anything without the cooperation and encouragement of the people who live here. And hopefully in these edited highlights of 2005 we've captured the essence of the character of the Greater Longstone area.
When it comes up they say, my God, they've got some right ones at Longstone.